Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
The text came at exactly 11:47 p.m., just as I was settling into my leather chair with a bourbon that cost more than most people's grocery bills. Girls' weekend in Napa. Don't wait up, honey. Love you. 3 heart emojis followed, which was strange because Julia never used emojis. She said they were unprofessional. I stared at the glowing screen of my phone, watching the little blue bubble mock me from across our pristine living room. Everything in this condo screamed success. The floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking Boston Harbor, the minimalist furniture that cost a fortune to look like nothing, the smart home system that controlled everything from the temperature to the mood lighting. Julia's architectural firm had designed it as their showpiece, and we lived in it like museum curators. My name is Warren Mitchell, and I'm a cybersecurity consultant. I help companies protect their digital assets from people who want to steal, manipulate, or destroy them. The irony wasn't lost on me that I couldn't protect my own marriage from the same threats. Julia had left 3 hours ago with a suitcase that seemed awfully large for a weekend trip. She'd kissed my cheek, the kind of perfunctory peck you'd give a distant relative, and told me to try not to burn the place down. Her laugh had that brittle quality it got when she was nervous about something. I took a sip of bourbon and watched the security camera light blink red in the corner. Julia had insisted on the cameras for protection, but lately, I wondered who we were protecting ourselves from. The next morning brought coffee that tasted like regret and a view of the harbor that looked gray and unwelcoming. I was checking emails when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Ava Brennan, Julia's best friend and the head of HR at Morrison & Associates, where my wife worked as a senior architect. Ava looked like she'd been crying, which was unusual because Ava Brennan never cried. She was the kind of woman who could fire someone before lunch and still enjoy her salad. "Warren," she said when I opened the door. "We need to talk." I stepped aside to let her in, noting how she clutched her purse like a shield. "Julia's not here. She's in Napa with the girls, remember?" Ava's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "That's funny, because my husband Carter told me he was going to Napa this weekend too. Business trip," he said. "Real estate conference." The bourbon from last night suddenly felt like acid in my stomach. Carter Reynolds was Julia's colleague, a smooth-talking real estate developer who specialized in high-end commercial properties. He was also the kind of man who wore cologne that cost more than most people's rent and thought charm could substitute for character. "Maybe it's a coincidence," I said, though we both knew it wasn't. Ava set her purse on our granite countertop with deliberate precision. "Warren, I've known you for 8 years. You're a lot of things, but you're not stupid, and neither am I." Yun, she was right. I wasn't stupid, just willfully blind. The late nights at the office, the new clothes, the way Julia's phone was always face down on the table during dinner, the way she'd started showering immediately after coming home, as if she needed to wash something off. "What do you want me to do about it?" I asked. Ava's smile was predatory. "I want you to help me prove it." We're made to one. For the next hour, we sat at my kitchen island like 2 generals planning a campaign. Ava had already done her homework. Credit card statements showing charges at restaurants Julia had never mentioned, hotel bookings that didn't match her supposed business trips, phone records with calls to Carter at all hours. "The thing is," Ava said, scrolling through screenshots on her phone, "Carter thinks he's clever, but he's been sloppy. Look at this." She showed me a photo from Carter's social media. A picture of a wine glass on a hotel balcony, posted yesterday evening. The background showed a distinctive building that definitely wasn't in Napa. "That's the Marriott downtown," I said. "Bingo! And guess who checked in yesterday afternoon?" I didn't need to guess. The pieces were falling into place with the satisfying click of a puzzle being solved. Except this puzzle was my marriage, and every piece that fit made the picture uglier. "So what's the plan?" I asked. Ava's eyes gleamed. "We're going to catch them in the act. But more than that, we're going to make sure everyone knows what kind of people they really are." After Ava left, I sat alone in my glass house, surrounded by all the expensive things that were supposed to represent our success. The smart home system hummed quietly around me, monitoring and recording everything like a digital conscience. I opened my laptop and began typing. As a cybersecurity expert, I knew exactly how to gather evidence without breaking any laws. Shared cloud accounts, location services, digital breadcrumbs, modern cheaters left trails everywhere if you knew where to look. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. "Having such a great time. Wine country is beautiful. Miss you. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Miss you too. Can't wait to hear all about it. But what I was really thinking was, game on. The Marriott downtown had a parking garage that connected to 3 different buildings, making it perfect for discreet meetings. I knew this because I'd done the security consultation for their digital systems 2 years ago. Funny how professional knowledge comes in handy in personal situations. I was sitting in my car on level B2, watching the entrance, when Carter's silver Mercedes pulled in at 2:17 p.m. Julia's BMW followed 3 minutes later. They parked 2 spaces apart. Amateur hour. If you're going to have an affair, at least have the courtesy to be good at it. I waited until they disappeared into the elevator before I got out of my car. The parking garage echoed with my footsteps as I approached Carter's Mercedes. The vanity license plate read, Closer 1, presumably because he closed deals, though I was beginning to think it had other meanings. I didn't touch the car. I didn't need to. I just took pictures, the license plate, the parking spot, the timestamp on my phone. Evidence was like a good foundation. You built it one piece at a time. My phone rang as I was walking back to my car. Julia's name flashed on the screen. Hey, honey, I answered, keeping my voice casual. Hi. Just wanted to check in. We're about to do a wine tasting at this amazing vineyard. The views are incredible. Sounds wonderful. What's the name of the place? There was a pause. Oh, it's Castello di something Italian. You know how these places are with their fancy names? Right. Well, have fun. Don't drink too much. I won't. Love you. Love you too. I hung up and stared at my phone. She was getting better at lying, I'd give her that. But she still had tells. The slight hesitation, the way her voice got higher when she was making things up. That evening, I met my old friend Hank Morrison at Sully's Gym, a no-nonsense boxing club in Southie that smelled like sweat and honest work. Hank had been my roommate in college before he became a trainer and part-time private investigator. He was the kind of guy who still believed in handshakes and keeping your word. You look like someone stepped on your grave, Hank said, as I wrapped my hands for sparring. Worse, someone stepped on my marriage. I told him about Julia and Carter while we worked the heavy bag. Each punch felt like punctuation to my story. Jab for the lies, cross for the betrayal, hook for the humiliation of being the last to know. So what's your play? Hank asked, holding the bag steady. I'm going to destroy them. Professionally, socially, completely. Hank raised an eyebrow. That's not like you, Warren. You're usually the diplomatic type. The diplomatic type gets walked on. I'm tired of being the nice guy who finishes last. Just remember, revenge is like boxing. You need to keep your guard up, or you'll get countered. I spent the next 3 days gathering evidence like a man possessed. The shared cloud account that Julia had forgotten about gave me access to her photos, including several selfies with Carter at restaurants I'd never heard of. The location history on our family plan showed her real movements versus her claimed whereabouts. The credit card statements revealed a pattern of deception going back months, but the smoking gun came from an unexpected source. I was reviewing Julia's email. We'd shared passwords years ago for convenience, when I found a folder labeled Travel Plans. Inside were hotel confirmations, restaurant reservations, and a detailed itinerary for what she called our special weekends. The most recent email was from Carter. Can't wait for our Napa getaway. I've booked the penthouse suite at the Marriott downtown. We can pretend we're wine tasting while we're room service tasting. You're incredible, and I'm lucky to have found someone who understands what I need. Julia's response made my hands shake. Warren has no idea. He's so wrapped up in his computers and his boring job that he barely notices I exist. You make me feel alive again. I can't wait to be with someone who actually appreciates me. I read the email 3 times, each reading like a punch to the gut. 8 years of marriage. Reduced to boring job and barely notices I exist. My phone rang. Julia again. Hi, sweetheart. How's the wine country treating you? It's amazing. I'm learning so much about viticulture. Did you know that the soil composition can completely change the flavor profile of grapes? Fascinating. You sound like you're having the time of your life. I really am. This is exactly what I needed. After I hung up, I sat in my home office, surrounded by monitors and servers, and realized that Julia was right about one thing. I had been boring. I'd been predictable, reliable, safe. I'd been the kind of husband who worked hard, paid the bills, and never made waves. But boring men can be dangerous when they decide to stop being boring. I opened a new document on my computer and began typing. At the top of the page, I wrote, Operation Glass House. Because people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, but they also shouldn't assume their windows can't be broken. Julia came home Sunday evening with a suntan that definitely didn't come from Northern California in October, and a story about wine caves that sounded rehearsed. She'd brought me a bottle of Cabernet that still had the price tag from the local liquor store, $12.99, marked down from $18. The vintner signed it personally, she said, pointing to a signature that looked suspiciously like it had been written with a Sharpie in someone's car. That's thoughtful, I said, examining the bottle. What was his name? Another pause. Giuseppe, very passionate about his craft. I nodded and put the bottle in our wine rack, right next to the real Napa Valley wines we'd collected over the years. The contrast was almost poetic. That night, Julia showered for 45 minutes, longer than usual, even for her. When she came to bed, she smelled like hotel soap instead of her regular lavender body wash. She kissed my forehead and rolled over, claiming exhaustion from all the wine tasting. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe, and planning her downfall. Monday morning brought the first phase of my plan. I called Morrison and Associates and asked to speak with Ava. I've got something you need to see, I told her. We met at a coffee shop near her office, one of those trendy places where they charge $5 for coffee that tastes like it was filtered through a gym sock. Ava looked professional as always, sharp suit, perfect makeup, the kind of woman who could intimidate a boardroom full of men without raising her voice. I slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were printouts of Carter's emails, photos of him and Julia together, and a detailed timeline of their affair. Ava's face went through several expressions as she reviewed the evidence. Surprise, anger, calculation, and finally, cold fury. How long? She asked. Based on what I can prove? 4 months, but I suspect longer. She closed the folder with deliberate precision. What do you want? I want them exposed, publicly, professionally, completely. That can be arranged. Carter's up for partnership at his firm next month. This kind of scandal would torpedo that immediately. And Julia? Ava's smile was razor sharp. Julia works for an architecture firm that prides itself on family values and professional integrity. Sleeping with a married client tends to violate both of those principles. We spent the next hour planning like two chess masters, contemplating a complex endgame. Ava had access to company communications, client lists, and professional networks. I had technical skills and a growing appetite for revenge. There's something else, Ava said, as we prepared to leave. Carter's firm is bidding on a major downtown development project. The client is very conservative, very traditional. If they knew about his extracurricular activities, it might influence their decision. How would they find out? Anonymous tip to the right person at the right time. These things have a way of getting around. That afternoon, I implemented Phase 2. Using perfectly legal methods, shared accounts, family plans, and publicly available information, I began documenting every aspect of Julia and Carter's relationship. Restaurant receipts, hotel stays, even the flowers Carter had delivered to Julia's office, charged to his business account, which was sloppy even for him. The paper trail painted a picture of two people who thought they were clever but were actually just careless. They'd used company credit cards for personal expenses, conducted their affair during business hours, and left digital footprints everywhere. By Wednesday, I had enough evidence to ruin both their careers and their reputations. But I wanted more than professional consequences. I wanted personal humiliation. That's when I remembered the Morrison and Associates annual Client Appreciation Gala. The event was scheduled for Friday night at the Fairmont Copley Plaza, Boston's most prestigious hotel ballroom. Julia had been planning her outfit for weeks, talking about networking opportunities and the importance of making a good impression on potential clients. Carter would be there too, along with his wife Ava, representing his real estate firm as both a client and potential partner for future projects. I called Julia at work. Hey, about Friday night. I was thinking of coming with you to the gala. Silence. Then, really? You usually hate those kinds of events. I've been thinking about what you said, about me being too focused on work. Maybe it's time I took more interest in your career. That's great, Warren. I'm sure everyone would love to meet you. Her voice had that strained quality again, like she was trying to solve a complex equation in her head. Perfect. I'll pick up my tuxedo from the cleaners tomorrow. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and smiled. Julia thought she was playing chess, but she'd been playing checkers all along, and I was about to flip the board. The beauty of my plan was its simplicity. I wasn't going to confront them privately or make a scene. I was going to let their own actions speak for themselves, in front of everyone who mattered in their
I deleted her number! You deleted it? She tagged you in a photo an hour ago. My everything thing with a...
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
professional lives. I spent Thursday evening preparing, not just my tuxedo and appearance, but also a small digital presentation that would be very educational for the gala attendees. Nothing illegal, nothing that couldn't be verified, just the truth presented in a clear, compelling format. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. So excited for tomorrow night. It's going to be perfect. I typed back. I couldn't agree more. It's going to be a night no one will forget. The Fairmont Copley Plaza ballroom looked like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers, gold accents, and enough flowers to stock a funeral home. Julia looked stunning in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She'd spent 2 hours getting ready, which should have been my first clue that this evening meant more to her than usual. You clean up nice, she said, adjusting my bow tie with the kind of intimate gesture that might have meant something a week ago. Thanks, you look incredible. She did look incredible, which made what I was about to do feel both easier and harder at the same time. The ballroom was filled with Boston's architectural and real estate elite, the kind of people who shaped the city's skyline and decided which neighborhoods would gentrify next. Julia worked the room like a politician, introducing me to colleagues and clients, with the practiced ease of someone who'd been networking since college. Carter arrived fashionably late with Ava on his arm. He looked like Central Casting's idea of a successful real estate developer. Silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of confident smile that sold million-dollar properties. Ava looked stunning and dangerous, like a beautiful predator in designer clothing. Warren! Carter extended his hand with theatrical enthusiasm. Great to finally meet Julia's husband. She talks about you all the time. I shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the way his eyes didn't quite meet mine. All good things, I hope. Of course, she's very proud of your computer work. The dismissive tone was subtle, but unmistakable. I was the boring husband with the technical job that nobody really understood or cared about. Cybersecurity, I corrected. I help people protect their most valuable assets. That's important work, Ava said, and I caught the slight emphasis on important. She was enjoying this as much as I was. The evening proceeded with the usual corporate social theater, cocktails, small talk, speeches about synergy and partnership. Julia and Carter maintained perfect professional distance, but I caught the subtle signals, the way she laughed at his jokes, how he found excuses to touch her arm, the meaningful glances when they thought no one was looking. Around 9 o'clock, the formal presentations began. Morrison and Associates had prepared a slideshow showcasing their recent projects and future vision. Julia was scheduled to present their residential division's achievements. That's when I made my move. I'd spent years in corporate IT, which meant I knew how to work with presentation systems. During the cocktail hour, while everyone was mingling, I'd taken a few minutes to visit the AV booth. The technician was happy to help a fellow IT professional troubleshoot some connectivity issues. Julia took the stage with confident grace, clicking through slides of beautiful homes and innovative designs. She was in her element, commanding the room's attention with expertise and charm. Our residential division has grown 200% over the past year, she said, advancing to the next slide. We've built relationships with key partners in the real estate community that have opened doors to exciting new opportunities. She clicked the remote for the next slide, expecting to see a chart of their growth metrics. Instead, the screen filled with a photo of her and Carter kissing outside the Marriott downtown. The ballroom went dead quiet. Julia stared at the screen in horror, clicking the remote frantically, but the presentation had been modified. Each click brought up another photo. Carter's hand on Julia's back at a restaurant, the two of them entering a hotel together, Julia wearing the same dress she'd claimed to wear to a client dinner that I now knew had been a romantic evening. This isn't. Julia's voice cracked as she looked desperately toward the AV booth. But the slideshow wasn't finished. The next image was a screenshot of Carter's email about their Napa getaway at the Marriott downtown, complete with his comments about room service tasting and Julia's response about her boring husband. The room erupted in whispers and shocked murmurs. I watched Ava's face carefully. She was playing her part perfectly, looking appropriately devastated and betrayed. Carter tried to rush the stage, but the slideshow's final image stopped him cold. It was a spreadsheet showing every hotel charge, restaurant bill, and flower delivery he'd put on his company credit card for their affair, along with dates and amounts. The total was over $15,000 in company funds used for personal entertainment. Julia finally found her voice. This is fake. Someone's trying to sabotage me. But the damage was done. The room was full of whispers, pointing fingers, and the kind of social media activity that would ensure this story spread far beyond the ballroom. Morrison and Associates managing partner, Richard Morrison, took the microphone with the grim expression of a man watching his company's reputation crumble in real time. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some technical difficulties. Let's take a short break while we resolve this situation. But there was no resolving this situation. The truth was out, documented and undeniable. I found Julia in the hotel lobby 20 minutes later, sitting alone on a velvet sofa, staring at her phone. Her perfect makeup was streaked with tears, and her hands were shaking. "How could you do this to me?" she whispered when she saw me approaching. "I didn't do anything, Julia. I just showed everyone what you'd already done. You humiliated me in front of everyone I work with. My career is over." "Your career was over the moment you decided to sleep with a married client and put it all in writing. I just expedited the timeline." She looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before, pure hatred mixed with desperate fear. "You're not the man I married." "No," I agreed. "I'm not. The man you married was naive enough to trust you. Consider this my graduation ceremony." Carter appeared in the lobby, his face red with anger and embarrassment. Ava was nowhere to be seen. She'd played her part and made her exit. "You son of a..." Carter started toward me, but I held up my hand. "I wouldn't, if I were you. There are security cameras everywhere, and assault charges would just add to your legal problems." "What legal problems?" I smiled. "Well, there's the matter of $15,000 in company funds used for personal expenses. That's embezzlement. Then there's the breach of fiduciary duty to your clients. And let's not forget the violation of your professional ethics code. I'm sure the Real Estate Licensing Board will be very interested in tonight's presentation." Carter's face went white. "You can't prove any of that." "Actually, I can. I've already sent copies of all the evidence to the appropriate authorities, along with a few key journalists who specialize in business ethics stories." Julia stood up unsteadily. "Warren, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, start over." "There is no we anymore, Julia. There's you, there's him, and there's the mess you've made of your lives. I'm just the guy who turned on the lights." I walked away from both of them, leaving them in the hotel lobby to figure out how to explain this to their spouses, their employers, and their consciences. Outside, the October air was crisp and clean. I loosened my bow tie and walked toward my car, feeling lighter than I had in months. My phone buzzed with a text from Hank. "Saw the news online. You okay?" I typed back. "Never better. The glass house finally came down." The story hit social media before I even made it home. Someone had recorded Julia's presentation on their phone, and by midnight, #Marriott Napa was trending locally. The video had been shared hundreds of times, with commentary ranging from shocked sympathy to brutal humor. I poured myself a bourbon, the good stuff this time, and sat in my living room, watching the city lights reflect off the harbor. The condo felt different now, less like a museum and more like a home. Maybe because I was finally the only one living in it. My phone rang constantly. Reporters, friends, colleagues who'd heard the news. I let most of them go to voicemail. The story would tell itself. I didn't need to provide commentary. Julia didn't come home that night, or the next night. On Wednesday, a lawyer called to discuss temporary separation terms and the division of assets. Apparently, Julia was staying with her sister in Newton while she figured out her next move. The professional consequences came swiftly. Morrison and Associates announced Julia's resignation to pursue other opportunities. Corporate speak for fired in disgrace. Carter's real estate firm was less diplomatic. They terminated him immediately and announced they were cooperating with authorities, investigating potential financial irregularities. The downtown development project Carter had been pursuing went to a competitor. The licensing board opened an investigation. His wife, Ava, filed for divorce and, according to mutual friends, was seeking half of everything, plus alimony. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt empty. Hank stopped by Friday evening with Chinese takeout and beer. "You look like garbage," he said, settling into Julia's chair, though I guess it wasn't Julia's chair anymore. "Thanks. You always know just what to say." "I'm serious, Warren. When's the last time you slept or showered?" I looked down at myself. Wrinkled shirt, 3 days of stubble, the general appearance of a man who'd won a war but lost himself in the process. I keep thinking about what she said, about not being the man she married. "You're not. You're better." Am I? I destroyed 2 marriages, ended 2 careers, and ruined 3 lives. What does that make me? Hank cracked open a beer and handed it to me. "It makes you human. You got hurt and you hit back. That's what people do." But I planned it. I calculated every move, anticipated every consequence. I turned revenge into a science project. So, they planned their affair. They calculated how to lie to you, how to humiliate you, how to steal from you. The only difference is you were better at it. We ate in silence for a while, watching the evening news. The story had made the local broadcast, a brief segment about corporate ethics and social media consequences. They used Julia's professional headshot and a photo of Carter from his company website. Both looked confident and successful in the pictures, which made the story even more dramatic. "What happens now?" Hank asked. "Now I figure out who I am when I'm not married to Julia Mitchell." Warren Mitchell. Same as before. No, not the same. The Warren Mitchell who was married to Julia was willing to be invisible, to be taken for granted, to be called boring. That guy's gone. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. It's important. Jay." I showed the message to Hank. "You going to respond?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to hear what she has to say. Part of me thinks I've heard enough." "What does your gut tell you?" I thought about it. My gut had been telling me something was wrong for months, but I'd ignored it in favor of being the understanding husband. Maybe it was time to start listening to my instincts. My gut tells me that Julia only wants to talk when she wants something. I deleted the message without responding. Saturday morning brought paperwork, divorce attorneys, asset division, the tedious business of untangling 8 years of shared life. Julia wanted the condo, which was fine with me. I'd never liked living in a glass house anyway. I spent the afternoon looking at apartments in different neighborhoods, places with character and history instead of designer fixtures and smart home systems. In Beacon Hill, I found a small but comfortable place with brick walls, hardwood floors, and windows that looked out on a tree-lined street instead of the harbor. The landlord was an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, who'd owned the building for 30 years. "You seem like a quiet tenant," she said, reviewing my application. "I used to be. I'm not sure what I am now." She smiled. "Sometimes it takes a while to figure that out. The lease is month to month if you need flexibility." I signed the papers that afternoon. Sunday evening, I was packing boxes when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Julia standing in the hallway, looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi, can we talk?" "We're talking." She looked past me into the condo, taking in the boxes and packing materials. "You're really leaving?" "Yes. Warren, I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible choices, but what you did to me, that wasn't justice. That was cruelty." I leaned against the doorframe, studying her face. She looked genuinely remorseful, but Julia had always been good at looking however she needed to look. "You're right," I said. "It was cruel. Just like lying to me for months was cruel. Just like making me feel crazy for suspecting the truth was cruel. Just like calling me boring to your lover was cruel. I never meant for you to see that email. No, you just meant for me never to know the truth. That's worse." She started crying, not the dramatic sobs of someone putting on a show, but the quiet tears of genuine regret. "I loved you, Warren. I still love you." "No, you don't. You love the idea of me, the stable husband, the reliable provider, the safe choice. But you don't love me enough to be faithful, and you don't respect me enough to be honest. People make mistakes. Mistakes are accidental." Affairs are choices. You chose Carter over me every time you met him at that hotel. You chose your excitement over our marriage every time you lied about where you were going. You chose your selfishness over my feelings every time you came home and pretended nothing was wrong. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. So that's it. 8 years of marriage, and you're just done? I was done the moment I saw those photos. Everything since then has just been paperwork. Julia nodded slowly, accepting what she'd probably known since the night of the gala. I hope you find what you're looking for, she said. I hope you figure out what you actually want, instead of just taking whatever looks appealing at the moment. She walked away without looking back, her heels echoing in the hallway until the elevator doors closed. I went back inside and continued packing. Tomorrow I'd start over in a new place, with a new understanding of who I was and what I was willing to accept. The glass house had finally come down, and I was the only one left standing in the rubble. But for the first time in months, I was okay with that. Nutjuts, I would that. I nummers and patient pilaber. Storinon, doanol, dva pat. I didn't know dva voishim. Chaternitsit treatsit trest, divet natsits.